Hello, hello. This is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barton. Today we are going to be talking about Trump and his alleged VP shortlist. I don't know if this is actually his shortlist or whatever. He was talking to Laura Ingraham the other night, and all these clips have gone viral because she listed some names of people he liked, and they're like, "Are those people on your shortlist?" She's like, "Yeah." But that doesn't mean that all these people that he listed are actually on the list, or there's not more other people that he's actually considering who are actually going to be the people who he's going to narrow down to, which he already said that he had it worked out who he wanted to be his VP earlier, which he could change his mind. Um, so I don't know how to trust this conversation, but everyone's talking about these names. So I want to talk about these names and give my thoughts on um whether I think they'd be good VPs for him or not. And I don't really know who is going to be, just to throw that out there. Um, Also, we'll be talking about this video Dylan Mulvaney had posted of his. He was talking about religion and saying, some things about how people judge him, and say things like, "Oh, I hope you find Jesus," and he's making a claim that he does know Jesus and stuff. So, I want to react and give some thoughts on his video. And also, there is a story that we talked about yesterday about a young woman who was 16 who got into an altercation at school with three other girls and ended up dying. And we don't actually know the cause of death. People speculate. Well, people reporting that these girls beat her to death. If someone says they beat you to death in the bathroom, I would assume that they had to pick you up off the floor and you didn't really make it too far off the floor. That's not what happened, but we don't know if she died di- directly linked to that or other kind of circumstances or whatever. Um, they're still investigating it, but people decided to attack Libs of TikTok and basically blame Libs of TikTok for this child's death. So there were some text messages that were shared online, or shared with I think a local Fox group news report or whatever. So I read the article about it, and turns out that she kind of instigated the fight. And so we'll talk about that and some of the rhetoric around that, because it's really going viral on social media. And again, we don't really know the cause of death. It's the darndest thing, but people always have a narrative that they want to push. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys, go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation to blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream, run my website, all that stuff. So you guys can support. I do very much appreciate that and appreciate you guys. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. You guys can also check out different merch that we have available at blacktnews.com. Like the "I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For" shirt. And we got this "Be Better Not Bitter." We got this black tea mug and other stuff you guys can check out. Also, you guys can check out some of my books that I've written. I have 17 altogether. Well, 17 that are published altogether. I have more than that are written, but I have 2 that are nonfiction, and the rest are fiction. So there's something for many people. So I encourage you guys to check it out. I'm sure that you will find something that you like and that someone else that you know who likes to read will enjoy. Thank you to those watching live. Thank you to those who are watching back. I appreciate you guys. I do have something that was pretty funny. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I did share it on Facebook and YouTube. Uh, of this headline from the Babylon Bee. I screenshot it. And by the way, I'm still, you hear it in my voice, I'm sure, sick. Yesterday, if I breathe kind of too deeply, I would like start coughing. So it's not as bad right now, but just let you know I may need to cough. So giving you fair warning. But this is from the Babylon Bee. Another Democrat attempts to purchase a black man. Talking about Clarence Thomas, because John Oliver went on a big rant trying to bribe Clarence Thomas into leaving the court, which uh, I'm sure they're gonna be very desperate. I mean, one, Clarence Thomas is up there in age. You do want to recycle these people out, I guess. And if Joe Biden loses the election and Trump gets back in, there's a good chance that Clarence Thomas will perhaps retire. I don't know if he'd want to play at Ginsburg and just like coast as long as possible. Um, he may retire and get replaced by hopefully a very conservative justice that will be as beloved as Clarence Thomas. And these lefties would obviously love for him to be replaced by Joe Biden, which would be like the cruelest sort of I don't know uh things that could happen with the whole how he treated him. I would hate that Joe Biden replaced Clarence Thomas. I would hate that would hurt my heart so much. So if they could get him to step down or need to be forced out, they've been trying to pick him off for a while and push him out. They get rid of him, and then Joe Biden picks another justice. They want to move the court in a more liberal direction, and so I get the desperate plea here, but it is desperate. But a good headline for Babylon Bee, especially at the tail end of Black History Month, calling him out on that. So very funny. I thought it was a good one. Nice little chuckle there. They've been popping out some good headlines. you know, uh, Sometimes they do headlines and I'm like, that's not even really a joke. Sometimes I'm like, that's not even a joke. Um, like this, they had one with Joe Biden that said, "Man ruled too senile to stand uh, trial, still fine to run the country," and I'm like, that's not a joke. Unfortunately, that's just a matter of fact with our reality. Unfortunately. Okay, but anyway, headlines. So we talked yesterday about a tragic story or tragic death of a young woman who considers herself to be non-binary. She goes by Nex. I'm not going to use they them pronouns. I don't care if you think I'm a monster for that. Non-binary is not a thing. I'm sorry. But it is tragic that she's passed away. Now, people were saying that this teen was targeted, or basically they were saying it was Libs of TikTok's death. Libs of TikTok was responsible for the death. The Libs of TikTok got famous just reposting things that TikTokers would say. Like they would just post the whole video in entirety, not taking people out of context. Maybe their captions weren't always great, but they would just post the whole video. It wasn't like someone take a snippet and someone try to really really make you look dumb. They would just use you. Like if you posted a dumb, crazy thing online, they would just find you, and everyone else outside of like the weird algorithm echo chamber that would like it would see it and go, what's wrong with these kids? What's wrong with these adults? What's wrong with whoever's posting these weird things? And their account really, really blew up. And then people started sending them tips, etc. And now they're pretty much a big force on the right. So some years ago, I think it was like 2 years ago, maybe, there was a teacher at the school that this girl attended that said something along the lines of, if your parents don't accept trans kids or like trans kids or something like that, like F them. It was something along those lines. And they reported on it, and that teacher ended up resigning. So because Libs of TikTok was responsible for that, because the superintendent liked Libs of TikTok, and for some reason they put her on like their school library board or association board or something. Some people were like saying it was a school board. I think it's the school board or something, but it's still kind of weird because she doesn't live there. But they were saying all that stuff kind of coupled to the point where these girls attacked this other girl and she's dead. So Libs of TikTok did allude that she was going to sue some of these people. Today, she told the Independent to check their email. I guess she sent something to them, and they wrote an article about this girl's death. And a lot of the article was about Libs of TikTok. And I'm like, they really, really want this woman to be blamed for this girl's death. Not really showing any evidence that it is her fault, but they are trying to connect those dots. And then there is a huge account, it has 3 million followers, called Under the Desk News on TikTok, made a video also blaming Libs of TikTok. Libs of TikTok said that they were gonna alluded that they would sue them. And so they did an update video today. We watched their video yesterday. And in their update, I'm like, okay, well, maybe in their update, they're going to correct some of the information that they got wrong. No. In their in their update video, they were just acknowledging that the media or the police are still investigating the case. They're still investigating, waiting for the toxicology report. They're still investigating, interviewing people at the school and looking into other causes of this death, because it's possible that she wasn't beaten to death in the bathroom like she originally reported, basically debunked in her own video. So I thought maybe she was going to correct some of the information that she gave in her other video. But she didn't. She just said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. And said, I'm not into doxing, but if any of you know those girls who got into that fight, you need to report them to the police. Now, I would assume, since there was a staff member who broke it up and some students that broke it up the fight, they probably know who those girls are. And once they do figure that this was, that she was killed because of the fight, that those girls will probably be arrested. And I don't know what kind of charges they'll get, because I'm assuming everyone is a juvenile. But I'm assuming they're going to wait till they know. But the problem is they don't know. There could be, yes, there was a fight, which by the way, according to text messages that the news got a hold of, that she, exchanged some information with a family member who shared the text. This young woman instigated the fight, actually. She said, according to her, she said that these girls were bullying her. I don't know what the kind of bullying it was, but according to her, she was being bullied by these girls, and she decided to do something about it. So she poured water on them. Now, pouring water on people and escalating to 3 girls beating you up, that's not like an equal use of force, right? It's definitely, they're like, I do something, I'll raise you this, right? But I don't know what she expected to happen after she poured the water on him, because they weren't going to melt like the Wicked Witch, that wasn't what was going to happen. And there were 3 of them, so I don't exactly want to victim blame here. It just probably wasn't the wisest thing to do. So they got into the altercation. She lost. The fight lasted about 2 minutes, which could be a long time, especially if you're really losing the fight. And from what I read on some accounts, she like fell and hit her head in it. Like, at first when people are like they beat her to death, I'm thinking like they're ramming her head into the floor. Like that, if they are doing something like that and she died from a head injury, then they are probably being charged for murder. If they're fighting and she slipped and hit her head and had head injury, considering they're minors and stuff, and that she admitted herself that she poured the water on it, they're going to weigh that differently in however they charge these girls. So anyway, they broke up the fight, and some people were reporting that they didn't call an ambulance, even though she couldn't even get walked to the nurse's office. According to several different articles, or the school anyway, they all were able to walk to the principal's office, or walk to the office. The medical professionals looked them over, and they did recommend that one of them, which I'm assuming was next, go to the hospital or seek more attention. And she did go to the hospital. about 3:30 that day. And apparently they sent her home. Now, if there was something else going on with her, if she was too injured to go home, the hospital should not have sent her home. So it's important to really investigate these things because not only could these girls be arrested, but you could have some kind of malpractice suit with the hospital as well if they did not do their due diligence. There's also the possibility that they gave her some kind of medication that she had some kind of bad reaction to. Um, there's also the possibility that there's some kind of underlying condition and it was a coincidence. I that maybe that one seems far fetched. But that doesn't mean that's not true. We don't know. Now she also said in her text that she was okay. She had some bruises and stuff, but she said she was okay. But she said if she feels dizzy or starts like getting nauseated, then she might have a concussion. So it seems like there was some concern that there could be some kind of other underlining things that could still pop off due to the fight. Um, but we just don't know. They're still investigating it. And someone like Under the Desk News saying things like, we got to report the girl, find the girls and report them to the police and stuff. Well, what? You don't know the identity of the girls because you're so certain that these girls killed this girl because of libs of TikTok. So, do you know all the facts enough to accuse a stranger of murder, but you don't even know the people who did the assault? So there's so many people who want to push a narrative and even refuse to accept that they're still investigated and they don't know. There's a possibility. Well, I don't even want to speak it. You know, something else just could have happened that next day when she collapsed, and then she collapsed the next day, and they sent her to the hospital. And people were upset that she got suspended too. Like she got beat up and they suspended her. Well, they usually, if you fight, they usually send you home. Um, and if she did instigate with throwing the water on them, pouring the water on them, that is an instigation. You could say that's not the same. It's not the same. But it's an instigation. It's an instigation that she chose to go through with while there were three girls who were allegedly already bullying her. And school's a rough place, man. School's a rough place. So there's just a lot of things that the school and other people I see a comment, curious question, were those girls black? I was going to ask that question out loud, but I don't know. They haven't released any information about the girls from what I know. And I am so dang curious about, I'm personally kind of curious about the ethnicity of these girls because I do kind of wonder how the story will shift, I guess. Because part of me is like, well, how much will they blame the girls if they are black? They'll probably just still be like, it's the right wing rhetoric and libs of TikTok, and won't really want to bring real accountability on them. But I don't think we know anything about them, or at least nothing about them has been released to the public yet. I've read quite a few articles about it. I haven't found anything about the girls' race yet, so I don't know. And where does he splash? Does she get their hair wet? I don't know. All kinds of questions. But people are really bad. Chad Felix Green is reporting on these things and arguing with people. They're just kind of like, how dare you talk about these things? How dare you? Like, are you saying she deserved to die, or she was being bullied? Like, why are you leaving that? And he's like, she's self-reporting that they bullied her. And that might be the case, but it is true that she still instigated that fight. And I'm not saying she deserved to get beat up in that kind of way against three girls. If someone was coming at me, I've never really bullied anyone, so I, I I don't know how people would feel that way. Sometimes they're like, you're so mean," because they don't like what I say. But I wouldn't say that I ever bullied anyone. If I was in high school though, and someone like poured some water on me or something, it's a punk move, and it's kind of like that. I'm not gangsta enough to just hit you, but I want to do something. So let's see what you'll do. And I, you know, I wouldn't have fought someone with like two other people. That would have been too much. Uh, but I probably would have gotten to a fight with someone instigated that. Yeah, just to be frank. But you could say, that's not right. It's people test you. People test you. So anyway, this is the terrible thing. Some of the stuff that their families are saying that in other articles that people are pushing around are like, are you saying that the family's politically motivated and that's why they're saying these things went happened a certain way? I don't think the family's politically motivated. They might be, but again, they're trying to figure things out about this child who's gone, and I'm sure they're devastated. Their friends are devastated. The community's devastated. This is a national viral story, and there's a lot of misinformation going around. Again, so people who's close to it, I can understand saying all sorts of things. But people who have accounts of like 3 million followers and so on saying it must be the libs of TikTok, they're responsible for murder, and saying that this girl got beat to death in the bathroom at school. Um, that's just not how you would properly report this story. So again, this could maybe they decided to beat her up because they didn't like her because she was non-binary or identified that way, and they're like, we're about to commit a hate crime, and they went in there and you know started doing some stuff. But again, she did initiate this instigation that initiated the fight, and so I don't know. I don't know what happened when this is all comes out and they're charged, but again, there's always the possibility that her death was not due to those injuries. And if they were due to those injuries, there were at least two different medical professionals, assuming they had an actual medical professional kind of person at the school look at her. And then she ended up going to the hospital, who didn't do enough to uh, really examine her condition to do all that they could to keep her alive. And again, there could be some kind of medical malpractice suit there, but we don't know. We don't know. So, just wanted to report that because there's a lot of rhetoric going around about this story that's just absolutely not true. Um, Another story that I reported on, Libs of TikTok, reported about the MS Society that like kicked out the 90-year-old woman for pronouns. Apparently, they backtracked it and apologize. That's what Libs of TikTok reported. Let me see if I can find the tweet about it really quick. So I didn't have a chance to look at the story. I just wanted to bring it up for you guys. But that's good that they backtracked it because they doubled down like 3 times. Let me see. Uh, uh, do okay, yeah. I found the tweet. A week later, the National MS Society apologizes to Fred and says they were wrong. Uh, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society apologizes to our longtime and dedicated volunteer Fran Itzkoff. Recently, we asked Fran to step down from her role as a group leader because of a statement she made that we viewed as not aligned with our recently implemented diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. We realize now that we made a mistake and we should have had more conversations with Fran before making this decision. So we got kind of a happy ending here. They backtracked it. They're apologizing, for what they did with this 90-year-old woman who's been a volunteer for 60 years, who they kicked out because she didn't understand pronouns or whatnot. Over her 60 years of volunteer service, Fran has been a committed champion for our cause. We had an opportunity to work with her and support her as a self-help group volunteer leader, but as an organization, we fell short. While we acted at the time with the best intentions, we did not have the clear protocols in place. We should have spent more time with Fran to help her understand why, as an organization, we are dedicated to building a diverse and inclusive movement where everyone has equitable access to care, connections, and support they need to live their best lives. We apologized to Fran directly and reached out to her to find a way to continue to work together in the spirit of continuous learning. We are focused on evaluating our process and fortifying our learning to ensure our team members are equipped on the best ways to implement all of our policies. We want everyone to feel confident and supported in their roles. This work is a journey requiring commitment, accountability, transparency, and courage. The National MS Society is a nonpartisan organization committed to one bold vision, a world free of MS. The support of our volunteers is essential to achieving our mission and ensuring people affected by MS can live their best lives. MS does not discriminate, and everyone who shares our vision of a world free of MS is welcome here. We invite all to join the movement and create a world free of MS together. We are stronger. So, bit of a happy ending there. So, I mean, they still probably have their kind of woke perspective on life with these pronouns and stuff, but they at least acknowledge that they handled this in all the wrong kind of ways. Because this woman, she genuinely didn't seem to kind of understand. But if there was a situation where someone was like, no, I don't want to do the pronoun thing because it's against my religion to lie or something like along those lines, would they still want them to not be a volunteer? I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't want this kind of smoke, but a successful sort of backlash that rerouted them in the right direction. So we'll say a win is a win in this case. A win is a win. Glad to hear that. I wonder if Fran will want anything to really do with them, but at least they changed course on that. They probably were like, we cannot afford to have that kind of crazy bad press continue. But they did like triple down on their initial decision to get rid of Fran. So glad that turned around. So let's talk about Donald Trump and his VP picks. He was being interviewed by Laura Ingraham the other night, and these clips went viral. I only have two that I want to show you. And Donald Trump was asked about the shortlist, and some interesting names popped up.
The audience has been asked who they think would be a good choice, and various names came up. One of them was, of course, Vivek Ramaswamy. Yeah. He's made a big splash. Ron DeSantis, who's making an appearance today in South Carolina, we just found out. Obviously, Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, and a big presence here for Tulsi Gabbard. Very interesting. And Kristi Noem as well, I should say. Right. Are they all on your short list? And when can we expect that you will announce your choice?
The one thing that always surprises me is that the VP choice has absolutely no impact. It's whoever the president is. It just seems. I remember when Sarah Palin was actually picked, and she did have a big up, and then they just went after her at a level that nobody's seen. The Republicans themselves went after what they did.
But you'll be a one-term president because you've already served, so you can only serve for one term, although they say you'll never leave office. I assume that you'll never leave. There'll never be another election
again. Don't do it. He'll never leave. He's never going. Oh, these people. They are.
So for that reason, it is important who you pick.
I think it's very important. But look, first is that, as we said, it has to do with whoever is, it's a very important position for that reason. You would like to get somebody that could help you from the voter standpoint. And honestly, all of those people are good. They're all good. They're all solid. And I always say I want people with common sense because there's so many things happening in this country that don't make sense. Who wants an open border? Who wants high interest rates? Who wants all electric vehicles? And they're fine, but you want to have choice. You want to go to combustion. You want to go to any hybrid. I think the hybrid are much better from that standpoint. But we were talking about faucets. We're talking about so much. It's all based on common sense. We want a strong military. We want choice in education. We want to have things that can really make our country great again. What we're doing with the open border is a disaster. We are destroying our country. We're going to change that fast, and we're going to get your energy prices down.
Mr. President, thank you so much for this.
So, he also said, and I guess I just had the one clip because I thought that one was shorter and the other one was like the second half of that first video. So I only have the one video, I guess, to show you guys. But he had also said that you want to make sure that whoever you pick, because is going to be a good president as well, because in the event that something happens to him, they would be the president. So important things to think about there. So his list that they mentioned Vivek, Tim Scott, Tulsi Gabbard, Kristi Noem, and Ron DeSantis. So I just want to throw out some thoughts there because I know people have strong feelings. They're positive and negative, etc. for these folks. Now I do want to point out again that he's in the past said that he pretty much was settled on this person who's a VP, but you can always change his mind. When there was heavy rumors about Nikki Haley, and a lot of rumors that seemed pretty credible from where I was hearing them, I was like, I'm not gonna say he's gonna pick her because he can change his mind. He changes his mind quite a bit. So I'm like, I'm not predicting, and I'm not telling you guys that that's gonna be the thing because he can always change his mind, and he could always sour on her, and she could be like, I don't want to do it. And by the way, her language has kind of changed. I mean, she just what kind of kept dodging when she was asked before about being the VP. Now she seems kind of more adamant that she doesn't want to be the VP, but I don't know if I trust her or not on that anyway. But there could be someone else he's considering that she didn't mention. Like, I don't think that's a complete list. So let's start with Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis has said that he does not want to be his VP, that he would rather just be the governor of Florida. And I think that's for the best. And there's so many people who didn't even want him to run for president because they just wanted him to stay in Florida. They're like, we need him in Florida. We need him. And I get that. He's a good governor. Everyone knows he's a good governor. Trump knows he's a good governor. He just really downplayed it when he needed to attack him. And even some of Trump's allies would attack, his record as governor a bit. And some people would still just attack DeSantis and say, no, he's the best governor in America. So no, he definitely has a better place just being the governor of Florida rather than going to be the VP. The VP, I guess it's a very important job because if something happens, you will be the president, right? But there's a lot of VPs. It's like not a super uber important job. One, Joe Biden did it. So there's that. Kamala Harris is doing it right now. Do you guys sometimes just kind of forget about Kamala Harris? She's not around a lot. They chuck her out sometimes, and she does like a terrible interview, and that's kind of that. That's kind of that. She's there goes my pen. She's not great. They will put her on some kind of task, and maybe they're impossible tasks, but they're things that she just can't do well with. They really limit her, and people don't find her very likable. And he picked Kamala, I'm sure, Because at first he said he's going to pick a woman, and then he said so many kind of racist things and had so many problematic racist things as a backstory and or background or his history of things that he voted for that people didn't like. That there was like this collective letter by people like Charlemagne and other folks, Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club and other people signed it and said, "You, if you want our support, like you have to pick a black woman." And I think there are kind of maybe more interesting choices than Kamala Harris, but he landed on Kamala Harris, and she's the VP, and she has a lower favorability rating than I think he does, so it's kind of awful. Uh, but Trump did utilize Pence, especially with like the task force with COVID and stuff, and I think he expects more from his VP than the average person, but he also doesn't have to expect more from his VP than the average person or president, I suppose. So it's interesting that he was kind of downplaying it. But before I watched even that snippet, I was talking to my sister about like Trump is the one who's going to be driving the ticket. Like people are ultimately going to decide whether they want to vote for Trump based on Trump, not so much his pick. Now, I think when he picked Mike Pence in 2016, that was like the stable conservative figure because he's a wild card and he did want that stability of someone with the high morals and other stuff like that that you'd associate with kind of Mike Pence with. And so he mentioned Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin added that conservative, grassroots kind of energy that McCain didn't have. And he was right that people attacked Sarah Palin and didn't like Sarah Palin. Rush Limbaugh would talk about how basically these uppity Republicans would just find her so annoying and they were mad about, campaign buying her clothes. And it's just like, does she not need clothes? Especially like the guy that you people want her to be in. But people just didn't like her, and people still had like a, sneer their nose up at Sarah Palin kind of mentality, even when she was going campaigning for Trump, and just hearing some people in the political world be like, "Oh, Sarah Palin," I'm like, "Ooh, Sarah Palin," and I saw the disdain up close, and because I wasn't really involved in the party. I mean, I voted Republican, and I was informed in 20 well that was 2008, um but I didn't really know people within the party and stuff, so I didn't see that like disdain of Sarah Palin up close and personal until like 2016 with some folks. So yeah, some people hated her, but she still spoke to a demographic that McCain was kind of lacking, so that's why they went out and they sought her out. So you want someone who's going to add something to the ticket normally, but in this case, Trump has been the president, and the biggest kind of concern would be what happens if he is impeached for a third time, and this one time it sticks, or or he passes away because he is elderly. He's very old. Something can always happen. He's beyond that, he could just get sick or. Um, God forbid someone does something intended him harm, but there is a stronger possibility whoever's going to be the VP could also probably be the president, whether it's Kamala or if it's Trump picking his VP candidate. So it is very important that they can do the job. But I did think it was interesting that he kind of downplayed it. So I don't think he's going to want someone with some super high alpha energy. I think he's going to want someone who kind of compliments him a lot. And I don't just mean like kiss is rare, but someone who's maybe a star in their own right, but definitely has a dimmer shine than he does by a lot. So, and you can say, well, everyone has a dimmer shim because he's Trump, but I think there's kind of a different energy that he's looking for, and perhaps a different temperament that he's probably looking for. I think whoever he picks is going to say a lot about his mentality moving forward to win. So with that being said, I think Ron would be a terrible pick for Ron. Maybe it'd be a fine pick for Trump. I don't think he'd really add a ton to his ticket. I think people would feel like if Trump was gone, there would be like a very competent executive who would make a very good president. But again, he should just really remain the governor of Florida. And there's really no benefit to Ron DeSantis being the vice president of Trump, because people thought like Mike Pence coming in, he that would set him up for if he wanted to run for president. And by the time the administration was over, you know, Trump, Pence is despised. There are people talking about hanging him. I mean, so you can't say Mike Pence without someone saying he's a traitor. And I talked about the other day how I sang the national anthem at different Trump rallies. The first one I sang at was about one with Mike Pence, and people were like, "He's a rhino," And I'm like, I was just telling a story, but people don't like him, and I know people on the left intensely did not like this man, and they'd say, I don't want to impeach Trump because then you get Mike Pence, and Mike Pence actually believes what he says. They didn't like that he was so conservative, whatever. But I did hear a lot of people on the right talk about how they really hated Mike Pence until there was this beef with Mike Pence and Trump and the not certifying the election. So if things can sour with Trump and Pence the way that it did, all it will take is someone not to going lockstep with Trump, and Trump souring and coming out against them, and then other people who really love Trump coming out against that person. So if someone thinks that, yeah, I will be the VP and I will be a shoo-in for 2028, I think that's a gamble. I think that's a really big gamble. And you put yourself at risk doing that. And I don't see the risk. I don't see the reward in it for DeSantis if he does that. So I would just stay as the governor of Florida. Even if Trump offered it, I would say no. I would just turn him down. I wouldn't do it. But considering I don't know if they would decide to do, if Trump would decide to do that. To be frank, I would kind of think less of him if he accepted that. I don't really think it's a good idea for him, but two, the Trump team said some awful things and did some awful things, and Trump facilitated some awful things and uplifted people who said some egregious things during the primary toward DeSantis. And you could be like, well, just get over it. I'm like, okay, Laura Loomer, who Trump has around and loves and adores, is like accusing his wife of faking cancer. Trump in his campaign was going around, saying that Ron DeSantis was defending slavery, accused him of, alluded that he was a pedo and other stuff like that. So I don't think you can just say stuff like that and be like, oh, we're cool. But you might work together, but I would just be like, nah. I'd just be like, nah, I'm good. I'm good in Florida if I was Ron DeSantis. So I think that dream is dead. And I think it should be dead if you really want what's best for the both of them, right? If you wanted DeSantis in the White House, then you should have supported him in the primary or whatever. Don't just let him be the governor. So people wanted anyway for him to say the governor of Florida. Vivek. Vivek is a very interesting choice for people. A lot of people, especially people who are chronically online, really like Vivek. They like how he addresses people. They like his ideas. He does have some good ideas. He's had some ideas that are kind of outlandish, that don't quite add up. And I've gone through some of those things and talked about some of those things before. The most recent, I guess, example that I really kind of went into was when he was on the Breakfast Club talking about his take on abortion. And he's like, we need to make the fathers pay for the mother and the child the whole time, 18 years. And I'm like, that doesn't incentivize women to not get knocked up. If they get a check for each baby daddy, and not only for the baby but for the woman too, and I'm like, then that incentivizes men to pressure women to abort. considering that pregnant women, uh, they are people always talk about the maternal death rate and stuff. Like homicide is like the top reason normally. So that would probably incentivize some bad actors to cause some harm if you're gonna make them pay a particular check for both people all those years and mandate that. It just there were so many things wrong with it. And I'm like, someone needs to have that conversation, bro. Like, you need to rethink some things. But there's other things that are more pressing that with Vivek that make me raise eyebrows. With some of the stuff that he said and done. But he's uh when he says something it comes against Nikki Haley or Ronna McDaniel, and he gets those clicks from people on the right. They're like, "Oh my gosh, she was owned." That's one thing, but there's many people who see him kind of as a jerk, and uh, like when he gets on the debate stages, it accuses basically everyone except for himself of being insincere politicians who are controlled by their puppet masters. And he'll say something like, I'm the only one who will say the truth about global warming. And then he'll say basically the same thing that everyone else basically believes, that he not that climate change is a hoax, but there's a hoax agenda regarding emissions and taxes and all the kind and gaining power and all that other kind of stuff. So I'm like, isn't that like how everybody's idea is, like treat it kind of like it's real, but it's not worth sacrificing our economy? That's not a novel idea that only you had and you're the only one brave enough to talk about. But there's, you're building that I'm the outsider. I'm the only one who will be honest with you. And then he goes on and says some stuff that's not true sometimes, which is really annoying. I think the danger of I understand why a lot of people like Vivek, but I think there's a lot of issues potentially if he was the VP. A lot of people, there's a lot of professions that people don't trust. And I think being a pharmaceutical salesman rates very high on the not trust list from folks. I've heard people who love Trump who said they will not vote for him if Vivek is the VP. That maybe sounds surprising to a lot of people, but the pharmaceutical salesman thing is a turnoff. If people continue to dig into how he earned money, there's been different people talking about making accusations about him getting money essentially from this Alzheimer's drug as like a pump and dump stock thing. I don't know if that to be the case or whatnot. But when he did go on like Kramer show to talk about the drug before it like really hit the market, he talked about a clinical trial that showed, promise. And Kramer's just like, okay, we just would be really careful because people could get hurt here, with their money. And he was just touting this study to show promise or whatever. That particular study, his from my understanding, his company did not do. The company where he bought it from did. And that was like a failed study, but they reworked some things and then made the same study to come out to be a success. And my question would just be like, before you took money from like teachers' retirement funds and all that stuff, why didn't you do your own tests to make sure, from like scratch, knowing that it was a failed drug with this other company? And I know you do tests and drugs fail all the time, especially with something like Alzheimer's. But that part, I don't feel like someone's really asked him, got a really good, answer to. And I just think if someone put that on a mailer, uh, I don't know how much smooth talking he's going to be able to convince someone or enough people that he didn't jip people out of their money when that's going out to mailers to people who aren't going to watch him talk on social media, on Twitter or TikTok, when in all the channels they watch is 2, 4, and 7, and they get a mailer that's like he ripped off old people or something. You ripped off people, made a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. I think things like that are really going to be a vulnerability for him. Um, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of like Trump said, they got to be the president if something happens to me. This, you know, he I'm not saying he was a Democrat or anything like that, but we know the first time he voted Republican was in like 2020, like for the presidential Republican anyway. And he had some strange views about like uh inheritance tax. He believed like it was a moral duty for people to give like 56% in inheritance tax. I'm like, that's not a very libertarian position. So there's just things that I question about Vivek. Um, but I really didn't like him making fun of Nikki Haley for converting to Christianity. That was a huge freaking red flag to me. So if someone is a VP, I'm assuming people on the right are just going to mostly still vote for Trump, and Trump is going to be the one driving the ticket, and the main thing is going to be beating Biden, right? But I would just really like it to not be Vivek, personally. I would really like it to not be him. Not at all. Not and I also think that he kind of has an energy like he'd be a good advocate for Trump on the campaign trail, but he'll be a good advocate on the campaign trail regardless of him being the VP. Uh, but I don't know if that's the kind of energy that Trump is looking for. But the most important thing to keep in mind, I think that about why Vivek would not make a good VP is because when he was asked about certifying the results of the election in 2020, he had some really troubling answers to that. And in his book that I bought and read, he praised Mike. Well, he thought Mike Pence did the right thing about certifying the election. And when he became a candidate and he's trying to appeal to Trump's base, he's fudging his answer. And he's like, well, I think we had an opportunity for a historic moment to do X, Y, and Z. And he's like, we should have, you know, uh, used, Mike Pence should have said, we're going to pass this kind of legislation with electoral reform. And so I'm like, how would you do all this and hold up the election and all that stuff? You wouldn't want Kamala Harris to do all this or Joe Biden to try to leverage the certification of the election to pass some kind of political agenda. Even if which it's not his job to introduce legislation like that. Why would Pelosi just kind of roll over and let that happen? So um, people are going to, by people I mean the media and the left, they're going to use the fact that Vivek is dodgy on the certification question to say, okay, we know Trump tried to thwart democracy before, and now he has a VP who said that they wouldn't have certified the results, or is alluding that he wouldn't have certified the results and would have basically held a gun to the country's head and say, pass this stuff. And it would have been very easy to say, no, I wrote what I wrote in the past was true. Like the certification, Mike Pence did the right thing. You could have just said something like that. And let that be. I would assume that his words that he wrote in the book before he had to appeal to a mass audience was probably his correct feelings, his true feelings. But now he's playing to some different people, and maybe you don't like Biden and you really, 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 really want someone else to be the president. But they're playing continuous January 6th footage. And Trump's on the ballot. And if Vivek is the VP, they're like, we're not confident that this man would do right in his capacity as the vice president. And that he would just back someone who wants to just obtain and keep power. So I don't think Vivek is a good choice for many reasons. And I could go on about it, but let me address some other folks. I don't. Uh, I questioned the Tulsi Gabbard thing. Uh, I know. I mean, people. I follow her. She says things that make sense regarding gender and women's sports, and other things like that. Things that are very easy clickbait sort of things on the right. Um, However, she was literally just a Democrat not too long ago. Ran for president as a Democrat not too long ago. Uh, so if something happened to Trump, would you want someone who's like an independent all of a sudden to be the president who was a Democrat not too long ago? I thought she would have been a very strong contender in 2016 for that's 2016, 2024 the Democrats, but they didn't want her. But just because she's a good media talking head that the right likes doesn't mean that she should be the head figure for one of the head figures for the Republican Party. You know, when it's easy, I think it's easy. It should be easy to say that a biological boy competing with women in sports isn't fair. That's an easy thing to say. Uh, what about your thoughts on life and other things like that that are really important to the right in Republicans and stuff? I I know she's rocked the boat with Dibs, and they didn't like her very much, though she like demolished Kamala Harris, and it was great. And I'd like to kind of see her do that again, just to be frank, in a debate. Which there's probably not going to be debates in 2024. There's probably not going to be. We'll see. We'll see. But putting her in a position where you might have someone who's actually still kind of a Democrat to be the head of the country, I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm sorry. Plus, she did vote present for impeachment, if I'm not wrong. And I don't know if that's something that Trump will just be like, oh, sure, she can be my VP. Because voting present isn't a yes for impeachment, but it's not a no. It's not a no. So at the end of the day, she kind of did something along party lines there. She didn't have the courage to just say no, we're not going to impeach him. So, not too keen on that. I think Byron Donalds. Byron is a very firm debater. He's not afraid to go on different places and talk about any kind of issues. He's a young man. He lives in also Florida though, and so Trump would or someone would have to change their residency for him to be the pick. I think as far as like running the country, I think he has all the confidence in the world to be like, oh yeah, I can totally be president. Yeah, sure. I don't know how that plays for everyone else like across the country. But again, Trump is like downplaying the VP role a bit. Maybe he would just kind of want that person who's going to watch his back and stuff. It could be Tim Scott. Who obviously ran for president himself. Trump kind of keeps taking, some little jabs at him that are kind of uplifting, kind of demeaning at the same time, and Tim just kind of smiles. So I don't know. I could see him being a good VP for a lot of people. I think out of everyone I mentioned, Tim Scott maybe makes the most sense. But then you got some diversity on the ticket. But I don't know. We got Kristi Noem, which was a guess on a lot of people's list, especially when she came out pretty early in support of Trump and backing Trump. I think there's some issues with Kristi Noem. Not anything I think to derail the actual nomination, or the election, I guess. But she talked a lot about COVID and stuff. She did want to shut down, but her legislature basically wouldn't let it happen. And then she was weak when it came to like gender ideology stuff too. So there's some digs against her. I think the rumors with her and Corey Lewandowski are the most kind of damning, messy thing going on. And you can say those are just rumors. There's some strong rumors from some, people in the know who thinks it's kind of legit. So I don't know. We don't know. But if there's truth to those things, I would assume those are the kind of allegations that Trump, he has enough drama. I don't know if he would add on someone else's drama. But I don't know. Maybe they could have already made some kind of deal. So it could be Christie. But I think could be a strong possibility that someone who was not named, who was not mentioned. So I legitimately do not know. I legitimately do not know. Someone said Big Carson. Big Carson's he's been in the scene a little bit, but he just kind of seems like I don't know. I don't think I think he's a nice wingman to some degree, but again, Trump is up there, so I think who he's going to pick is going to be quite important, and I don't think he has that kind of big energy to be someone you see to maybe take over the nation, and he hasn't been in the eyes of people that much for a minute, and I don't know. I don't know. I do not know, guys. But those are just some of my thoughts on some of these names. None of them really excited me. But I'm sure Trump will keep us on our toes and we'll have a very interesting choice. But I feel strong no's about some people, but we'll see. We'll see. Last thing that I want to mention is this video with Dylan Mulvaney, and it's kind of long, a couple minutes, but he was talking about how people will say, "Oh, you need Jesus," and he's like, "I am religious." So I just want to go ahead and play it and react to his feelings, because to me it kind of reminds me a little bit of what happens when you have that "he gets us" sort of mentality from that Super Bowl commercial we talked about quite a bit last week. So let us watch Mr. Mulvaney. This had a lot of views on TikTok.
To preface this video by saying this video might seem a little out of left field for me because I don't often speak about my faith on here. So if you are at all triggered by God or religion, you can totally keep on scrolling. I love you. And if you're still here, where are my Jesus girlies at? Hey, I am in a okay place with God right now, and I'm trying to find what my faith is after, kind of growing up in the church and then being really burned by it. And right now, God and I are like dating again. We're not exclusive and we're not living together, but we're in a good place. And I read something today that really got me thinking, because it was a journal entry from a few months ago when I was really going through a difficult situation. And it said, if God was real, why would God let this happen to me? And now I read it back and I thought back on that specific situation. And I am so grateful that I went through it. And I'm so much stronger because of it. And I actually thought maybe God was like the most present with me during that situation, because I needed to come out a changed person, someone that's stronger, someone that has learned something. And
that is a good overall sort of lesson and perspective of life, because sometimes things happen, you feel kind of alone, and you're kind of like, God, where are you at in this situation? And I remember one time I was going through something. It was really, really, really hard time for my family, and someone gave me a word, was like, you will be thankful that you went through this. And this is gonna sound awful, but I was just like, I don't see that happening. But and nowadays I have to say, like, I'm so glad that God loved me enough to prove me wrong, rather than just, me continuing to have to suffer and then and just be like, you know what, fine, you can just stay in that forever. And instead he just, gave me grace and peace and turn the situation around and put me in a position where I could look back and say, man, you really were working out the whole entire time. So he's not everything. He's saying some things that make sense here. So I just wanted to note that Lord does work in mysterious ways.
And I am just so sick of these people trying to use God and religion against the queer and trans community. Like, we are not entitled to having any sort of faith. And a lot of the times a comment will be like, I hope you find God, or you need Jesus. And I'm like, honey, I found God and we're in cahoots. We're doing just fine. And a lot of the times too, really hateful commenters, I'll click on their profile and in their bios, they'll have a Bible quote and it'll be like, treat everyone, equally. I'm like, well, what the hell? What did you just leave in my caption or in my comments? And I also think there might be people.
So it depends what they're saying to you. I mean, I don't doubt that Dylan gets pretty gross comments from people, and then you might click on their profile and it might say loving Christian or something. There's definitely people on the left who will say like awful things to me, and then I'll click on it and it says like love everybody their profile or something. And it happens all the time. So I mean, people are not always their best selves when they're online. But if they were like, you are a man, stop mocking women, and or use pronouns like he, they, I mean he, him for Dylan here, and if those are the kinds of things that upset, and you look and you're like, oh, how dare you say, treat people equally, or I love God, and then you're mean. I guess specifically I'd have to kind of know what he's talking about as far as the treatment from some of these people. But the nice part was, the beginning of it, and then there's flipping here, like him and Jesus are in cahoots, and upset at these people who are calling, well, not calling him out, but saying you need God, you need Jesus, and I mean, we all need a little more Jesus, but there's a reason why growing up in my community, my church and stuff, we'd ask the question like, are they saved? And they'd be like, they're saved, or they say they're saved. And they're like, but are they for real, for real? There's a lot of people who identify as being a Christian, but don't really live a life that is pursuing perfection, or because not everybody's perfect, but you're in a pursuit of perfection. And or they're living a life of self rather than pursuing after what God wants for their lives. And they'll go out and indulge in their flesh and their desires, and if you say something, they're like, well, God knows my heart. And he's like, yeah, that's why he said it's deceitful. That's why he said that in the word. So yeah, God does know our hearts, and that's why we're supposed to slay it upon the altar and follow after him.
That don't particularly enjoy someone like me, and they might watch this video and say, well, that's Satan masquerading himself as a believer. And I sure hope not, because I do not fare well in extreme heat. But also, I don't feel evil. I don't feel like a bad person. And I would like to think that I can still have a relationship with some version of God. And I also kind of laugh thinking about those people, like, spending their whole lives hating a specific type of person. And then they check into heaven and they get their outfit on, and then they get escorted to the cafeteria, and there's assigned seating, and they're seated next to like someone like me, and they've got to just sit together eating for the rest of eternity. Can't wait.
Yeah, that's doesn't really work like that, but
I really think that maybe someone like me, people like me, maybe we're like a discrepancy in nature. Let me describe what I mean. Like, have you ever seen a flower before that you're like, holy crap, how can that color exist in nature? Like, how is that natural? Because a lot of people look at someone like me and they say that's a very unnatural person. And we look at this flower, or maybe it's a mountain that looks like it's carved from like a sculptor, from humans. You can't believe that that would just exist in the world. Or a bird that sounds different than it looks. Like, you hear it and then you go, oh my god, that does not match up. Maybe that's like someone like me. Maybe what's so crazy though is that usually when we look at those things in nature, we're fascinated by them, we admire them, we want to learn how that's possible. But when it comes to human forms that maybe have some discrepancies or a little different, we immediately want to turn away from what we don't understand and what we don't know. And I think maybe, what if there was a way to find connection through faith? And what if I wasn't here as something evil, but what if I was here as something good?
So I want to pause it there to commentate on this natural unnatural sort of thing, because like he's saying, sometimes in nature there's things that are odd and we're like, oh, that's really fascinating, oh, that's really cool. Sometimes there are things that are unnatural in nature and it kind of sends alarm bells um to us, because we understand that there's something not quite right. But so I wouldn't say we're all fascinated like, oh, that's such a cool great thing. um you know, there's a particular condition where um if you see like something that has like a lot of holes or a lot of circles, my your uh you'll start getting chills, and me even talking about it, thinking about it, I already have like chill like on my body. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a mechanism, just to kind of like a danger mechanism to kind of stay away from things like that. So there's this one sculpture where it has a bunch of holes and like a person and like a child. I'm like, that doesn't look good to me. But gosh, I wish I could knew the name of it. I didn't think that I would mention it, so I didn't look it up. But we're not always like, ooh, cool. But to Dylan's point, though, there's nothing natural about him and what he's decided to do to his body. Allegedly had surgery to shave down his bones. Some people don't think he actually went through surgery. Allegedly is taking hormones. Um, some people don't think he's actually taking hormones. But if you do those things to yourself, that is in no way natural. There's not a natural process happening to you. You know, it's not like some kind of abnormality where someone is born with something. um you believe something, or you're parading around as something, and then you're deciding to go ahead and alter your god-given form to conform to this idea of yourself, rather than submitting to the image that the father crafted for you. So really not a good example for himself. If he was I can understand maybe if he's talking about his uh affinity for men, which he's hinted that he was interested in looking at women and other stuff too. So I don't know where he's falling on that sexuality scale right now. And I don't know how much he says to his audience to just get clicks or, comments or whatever. But even in that case, Mike Winger has a very good 4-part series regarding like homosexuality and stuff, and he says it's not about desire, it's about design. And I don't want to go too deep into that, but if you're curious about what the Bible says about that topic and all sorts of other things, it is a good breakdown on that. Very thorough, and very respectful. So, but this whole like days of girlhood and stuff, that's not something that is natural. And he's saying he doesn't feel evil. I don't think a lot of people go around that do wrong. They're like, I feel like I'm doing evil today. But that doesn't mean that you're not out of alignment with God. That doesn't mean that you're walking in obedience with God. And he said that, they're not exclusive, but, alluding that, you're going to find me in heaven and other stuff. Um, in a general sense, not even just like speaking about him, everyone has to come to terms that there's things within ourselves that we have to deny and submit to obedience to Christ. To give a kind of example, I'm from like a Pentecostal sort of background and stuff. So I got a word a couple of um uh weeks ago that I didn't love. And it was about a big change in my life that I didn't care for, like the last thing I would have kind of hoped for. And I knew that it correlated or was a more witness, I suppose, uh, with another word that I got some time ago from a different minister. And so I went back through different recordings so I could go listen to that one again. And in my research for trying to find that other word, I found another word from another person who gave this confirmation about this similar thing. And so it's just kind of like, oh my gosh. So I'm a mindset if God wants me to do something, I'm going to be obedient. But there's just like being willing to be obedient, and then your heart being submissive to what God wants is another thing. And so I just was trying to pray and get the right mind and the right heart um, to whatever God really wants. And so one day we were worshiping in church and we were singing this song, Let Praises Rise, which I'm not going to really try to sing because my luck right now, I'll probably start coughing. You guys know I have a decent voice, but um, actually you could find us singing, like my praise team singing it somewhere on Facebook. But we were singing that song, and there's a line that's like, come feel my life, come fill my life from the inside, from the inside of me. Well, that is a line, but it's like, set me on fire from the inside of me, because all I want is for you to be glorified, um, and you to be lifted high. Um, so at that point, that song really hit me in the feels, because I'm like, there's these things that I do want and I do have these desires, but at the end of the day, God, what is best going to glorify you, uplift you? And and I know that you have my best interest at heart. Um that you care about the desires of my heart, but not the fickle ones, but the true desires. Like, you can't, I don't think you can really know yourself until you kind of surrender and find that person that God formed you to be. Uh And so, maybe you think that certain things are going to work out, or think that certain things are your desires, and you achieve them. You're like, oh gosh, this isn't what I thought it would be. God knows what's best for you, and so I trust that God knows best for me. But but at the end of the most important thing is like, God, what is my place, that at the end of the day I can glorify you in whatever position that I have. And if this is what you want for me, Lord, just help me get to that place where I can really love being there, love doing that, because I'm doing your will. So regardless of how saved you are or how long you've been involved in the church, the more you get closer to God, there's always going to be, I think, some kind of level where you might find that you have to put something else at the altar and let that go and say, God, you are still number one. There's always another deeper level, a higher level to achieve in your walk with Christ. So I can appreciate that Dylan appears to be open and having, a relationship with the Lord. But if you are not willing to lay yourself at the altar and take up your cross daily, but you have to deny yourself. So this days of girlhood thing, there is no version of this that is godly. Not at all in the least bit. And beyond, I mean, even like the idea of like the cross-dressing thing, there's that's not something you're even supposed to do. Let me read a little bit from this is from Got Questions. This is if you Google questions about the Bible, it's the first thing that pops up. Deuteronomy. The question is, what does the Bible say about cross-dressing / transvestism? Deuteronomy 22:5 deals with the issue of cross-dressing, men dressing in women's clothing and vice versa. In this passage, God commands that a woman is not to wear that which pertains to a man, and a man is not to wear that which pertains to woman, for all that do so are an abomination. The Hebrew word translated abomination means a disgusting thing, an abominable in the ritual sense of unclean food, idols, mixed marriages, in the ethical sense of wickedness. Therefore, this is not simply God addressing the fact that a woman might put on a man's garment or vice versa. Also, this is not a command that a woman should not wear pants, because there are people who are like, women shouldn't wear pants. It's not about that. As some use this passage to teach. The meaning here is that this cross-dressing and transvestism is done in order to deceive or to present oneself as something that he or she is not. In other words, this speaks to a woman changing her dress and appearance so as to appear to be a man, and a man changing his dress and appearance so as to appear as a woman. This is a definition of cross-dressing or transvestism. So this idea of him living his life trying to be a woman is something that is abomination before God. And they went on to say, we can also reason that this dynamic behind this is a leaving of what is natural and taking on that which is in God's word called unnatural, Romans 1:24-27. Paul tells the Corinthian church that the way a woman wears her hair is a reflection of God's order, and therefore a woman who cuts her hair appear to be as a man, or a man who wears his hair long to appear as a woman brings shame to them. 1 Corinthians 11, 3-15. The issue here is the motive and the attitude of the heart that is evidenced in the choice to rebel against God's standard for obedience. These are principles we can use to reason in application. Whatever the prevailing custom, men and women should wear gender appropriate clothing, dressing decently in order, 1 Corinthians 14:40. To apply the principles the Bible calls cross-dressing or transvestism to a choice that is a demonstration of unbelief and rebellion against God and his order. And, we know that God made male and female. These people want to act like there's other categories or that they're interchangeable. And that's just that is going against God's design, God's, order for mankind. And, having this platform and living in disobedience to God and spreading that sort of confusion, that isn't right. And I pray for his deliverance, but he doesn't, like the idea of people saying you need God, you need Jesus. Again, we all need a little more Jesus. A song, I need a little more Jesus, and I know some people probably sincerely mean that when they say it to him, and aren't just saying that as an insult. But regardless of how people say it, it is the truth. But he does need deliverance from this lifestyle. And if you're going to be a follower of Christ, you have to follow Christ. It's not just about he's my mimosa buddy or something like that. Or he said we're not exclusive, but we're kind of talking like that. That's not how it's supposed to work. And obviously he's testing things out, or he's claiming he's testing things out. But Jesus is not like your new age hippie buddy. And that's why so many people don't like the feel of like the He Gets Us commercial, because of like there's just this, I don't know, treat everybody any kind of way, not any kind of way, but like it's just about the niceties, and it's not about the obedience and submission to Christ himself, you know, and that there's a big element of salvation missing, of deliverance missing. Yes, the gospel is for everyone, should be preached to everyone. I love what he said about like people in the LGBT community, like yes, religion, faith, it's for them. God, it's for everybody. Um, but it's not for everybody to come in and then be disobedient to God's order, his design, his commandments. The Bible says the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep his commandments. Jesus said, if you love me, that you'll keep my commandments. So you can't just come in and be like, God made me this way, or, I'm an aberration in nature, but that makes me more lovely. And when you choose to live out your, what we would say, unnatural desires. So let's finish this out.
And I guess I just get really, really sad thinking that I'm not allowed to have a relationship with some higher power, or that I am the villain. I don't want to be Dylan the villain. I don't want to. And I think I just hope that any queer or trans person that like wants to have a relationship with something bigger than all of us feels like they can. And I don't know, that's where I'm at. But I love you, and I hope that wherever you're at with your faith is good. Let me know if maybe I don't know if I'm alone on this, or let me know if you feel similarly. But I hope you have a great weekend, and I love you. Okay.
So again, like everybody can have a relationship with the Lord. But he's still got to be the Lord at the end of the day that we submit in obedience to. And there are people who have left transgenderism, who've been delivered, from that. Many who have, nice accounts on TikTok where they talk about that. There's one young woman named Maddie. She was living as a man, and planned to marry a woman, and the Lord turned things around for her. And I think she found her grandma's Bible and just started kind of reading it, and eventually just kind of stuck in her heart. And then she felt like she needed to break up with a girl and stuff, and now she's a mom. And I think she got married because she was dating someone, and they had a mess up, I would say a slip up, but they, um, have a nice little family. I don't know if she did to get married, but I think they were planning to. But lovely young woman, no longer trans. There's other people who have left transgenderism, and I hope for that for Dylan. I hope that Dylan can have a turnaround and use his huge platform to say, this was an evil thing that I was engaged in, but there's deliverance in Christ. I hope that's his testimony. Just like it's a testimony of others. There was a young woman who was on Ali Stuckley's podcast who started the Rainbow Freedom Coalition. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I know I watched the interview. It was really good. But she said if she had known that God can make her feel the way that God makes her feel, she just would have never bothered to go into transgenderism. And in a way, she thought she would, kind of become a man because she thought she would be kind of more protected it was kind of like, I guess, a form of internalized misogyny of her transition. And she said ultimately becoming a man, or trying to become a man, didn't keep her protected either. Um, but she had a wonderful testimony, and it's worth checking out. But you know, I my hope isn't to just, it is for people to find freedom in Christ, and to find salvation. And it's beautiful on this side, but if there's some kind of line where there's compromising, and everyone who like does, if you consider people who do want you to find that salvation, that you think that they're just kind of hateful, and you're good in your little bubble of still being in disobedience to God, that's not right. And so people will come out and obviously correct that, as I'm trying to say my piece here, and I assume other people will maybe chime in. And that's how I first saw this video. Someone was chiming in and adding their 2 cents, and they're very respectful in their reply. So I might still do one on TikTok myself, but yeah, just, I mean, I don't know how much of that is content, and how much of that is a kind of a sincere sort of feelers out there in the Christian sphere. But I do, pray that his heart and mind and body comes into obedience to Christ, you know, and we all have to make a decision eventually to just say yes. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content, the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream, run my website, all that stuff. So you guys can support. I appreciate it. You guys can check out different merch and books and so on that I have, that you can find if you go to the merchandise page on the website. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully better, but I didn't have a little coffee fit today. But God bless you.